So I don't normally stand behind a pulpit when I speak, but I need notes on this because this is a subject that is very interesting to me. So thanks for coming to the Massage Therapy Media Talk. I want to talk to you guys today about prediction and the sensory system and how we think we learn. We may actually be doing it all backwards. And a lot of this is based off of work by a lady here in Toronto called Lisa Barrett-Feldman, who's a PhD in neuroscience and psychology. And what she talks about that I think is really interesting is context. And because we are a manual therapist, context kind of becomes key. And the more we dig into neuroscience, the more we understand context is actually primary and essential to all of our care. And without appropriate context, we find less effective treatment. So when we talk about context, one of the things we need to remember is that context helps create emotions, memories, and experiences. And those emotions, memories, and experiences are ingrained through both painful experiences, traumatic experiences, but also feel-good moments, happy emotions, as well as repetition. And so context is created through this bombardment of messages that our brains receive. And the thing that's interesting to know and pay attention to is that the brain is actually trapped inside this black box, floating in a clear liquid. These messages that it receives, the sound from the microphone, the lights, taste, your brain doesn't actually experience these. There's nothing stimulating your brain. These are messages sent to your brain. And the thing that's interesting is that these messages, they're not there to tell you good or bad. They're not there to tell you how to behave. It's simply information. And then your brain has to take all of this sensory information and interpret it and create context to create experience. When that information is interpreted by the brain, this is what I want to focus on, because when we interpret it, we have a high likelihood of misinterpretation, even in our own lives and our own experiences. So I want to use an example. I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to have you guys listen to this. Hopefully it will be loud enough. And I want you to try to tell me if you understand what is being said. So hands up if you think you know what was said. Okay, so now I'm going to let you know that what was said is the Pulitzer Prize was founded in 1917 by Joseph Pulitzer, and the Nobel Prize was founded in 1901 by Alfred Nobel. Now that I've told you that, listen again. Interesting, right? How many of you guys could understand it this time? Little unique, right? So there's a reason. You predicted what you would hear, and your sensory system said your prediction is right or your prediction is wrong. And that's the only thing the sensory system has to do to the brain. Sends information, and your brain goes, that's what I thought was going to happen, or that's not what I thought was going to happen. So let me use another example. Everybody stand up. At home, stand up. Close your eyes. With your eyes closed, sit back down. Did you fall? Did you land in your chair? You can open your eyes again if they're still closed. The reason you didn't fall and the reason the chair was there is because your brain predicted where the chair would be. And then your sensory system confirmed that prediction through habit, through repetition, but even the height of the chair, not just its location, was predicted. Because through time and repetition, your body has learned proprioceptively to understand that anywhere from 28 to 32 inches in North American seats, you'll hit a chair. Okay? So your brain predicts that height, and then your sensory system confirms whether or not it's real. Now, here's something that's really interesting. This is called learning. This is not brand new, right? We all know this experience is learning. But what happens if you predict something incorrectly, and then your sensory system confirms it? How many of you have siblings? You all remember an experience, and yet you all remember it slightly different? Oh, that's not how that happened. This is how it happened. You all have a prediction that you choose to justify based on need. So I'm going to use another example here on prediction being right or wrong. And when this is done, I want you guys to tell me what you heard. What'd you guys hear? Typing? Anything else? Gunfire? Anything else? Popcorn? I've heard fireworks. That was actually fireworks, by the way. Context matters. You guys are in a room here. You're at home. You have no reason to take that sound and think fireworks or gunfire or typewriter or popcorn. Your brain said, I'm hearing something. I'm receiving a stimulus. This stimulus is important. I need to pay attention to it. And I need to know one very important thing. Am I safe? So you made up context that was completely imaginary and unreal, specifically to feel safe. And this is what the human body does at all times. We're always trying to predict the world around us to go, do I need to run away? Do I need to stop moving? Or do we need to fight? That's it. Your brain is constantly seeking safety. Now, these predictions, the great thing about them is they keep you alive. And not all your predictions are life involving. Getting up and sitting down off the chair, not necessarily going to save your life. But if the prediction was necessary for saving your life, you better hope you got it right. So one of the things that happens when we predict is that even if the sensory stimulus is telling us our prediction is wrong, barring a significant enough influence, your brain will store that sensory input away incorrectly and going, my prediction was right. Because it is metabolically simple to repeat behavior. I'm going to use another example. So there's this test called the self-discrepancy theory. And in the self-discrepancy theory, people are asked to talk about themselves and list attributes about themselves that they like. I'm happy, I'm tall, I'm compassionate, whatever it is. And then they're asked to list a list of attributes of things they idealize and they wish they could be like. And oftentimes, these two attributes don't line up. And the reason they don't line up is not because we don't understand them. It's because they become synchronistic of each other. So oftentimes you'll hear patients describe, I'm sad and I'm in pain, or I have anxiety and sadness and depression. Sadness and anxiety are separate emotional experiences, and yet they become convoluted as one emotional experience. Happiness and pleasure are separate experiences, though they become synchronistic of each other. So what happens is, we often take these messages and we put them together in an inappropriate manner in the brain. And a good example, something that many of you may be experiencing if anybody has teenagers or you've ever been in love in your life. When teenagers or adults seek companionship, when they feel alone, they want to belong to a community or they want to have a belonging, what's one of the most common physical ways people seek intimacy? Making love. They are confusing in their brain the sense of belonging and the sense of intimacy. And the two are separate, but they choose to put them together very frequently for a multitude of reasons. There are so many possible reasons they go together. And yet, you can have intimacy without the sense of belonging, and you can have the sense of belonging without the physical intimacy. The two can be separate, though they are frequently together. Another good example from Lisa Barrett Feldman is when she was a graduate student, she was at school, and there was a male fellow graduate student there who was attracted to her and kept asking her out to go for dinner. And she kept saying no, she wasn't attracted to him. And over time, she relented, which is a whole other issue, but she did relent, and she eventually went for coffee. And while she's at coffee, she's paying attention, and she starts noticing she's having heart palpitations, and her cheeks are getting flushed, and her eyes are blinking a lot more. And her brain starts going, wait a minute, am I attracted to this guy? I've spent a long time thinking this guy's not attractive. And then she starts evaluating, well, maybe he's not as bad looking as I thought. He's funny, he's nice, he paid the bill. Well, yeah. And so she eventually agrees to go out on another date with him. She goes home, she opens the door, and she spends a week praying to the porcelain gods with a fever. She got sick. Her heart palpitations, her flushed cheeks, her eyes closing more. It's just her being sick. But the context, her brain looked around her and said, oh my God, I'm on a date. My heart's increasing its rate. I'm feeling flushed. I should be attracted. Completely separate emotion from the experience. Now, this is called an inverse problem. And an inverse problem is one where we have an effect, let's say a stimulus in this case, and then we try to calculate the cause based purely off the context. One of the consequences of an inverse problem is that often our brain guesses wrong. And when we guess it wrong, we keep it that way because metabolic efficiency is one of the major concerns for humans at all time. We are constantly trying to find ways for optimal potential performance with the least amount of energy consumption possible. Metabolic goal, the metabolic goal is traditionally metabolic efficiency, and it wins. It's a very dominant system inside your body and your brain. And so it is inefficient for you to process information as though you're hearing it for the first time, as though you're seeing it for the first time, as though you're experiencing it for the first time. So even if it is a brand new experience, something you've never experienced before, your brain will try to file it away with a correlated experience because it's energy efficient to store it that way. Not because it's right, but because it's efficient. So how can we take this information and apply it to your clients, right? That's the goal, patient and client care. So it's very simple. If the brain predicts a painful experience, it becomes metabolically efficient to have that experience confirmed based on its sensory input, even if that input is denying your prediction. That makes sense? So if I think I'm going to have low back pain, then when I perform a given task, it is more efficient for me to experience low back pain than not. This is done passively, and it becomes inversely confirmed. So the solution is don't be passive and don't let your clients be passive in their recovery. They need a journal. They need to write down what hurts, when it hurts, how it hurts. They need to use descriptive text, and they need to be accurate on the positive and negative parts of their symptoms. Because when we can predict something, we can confirm it based on our sensory inputs, but that prediction has to be actively involved, not passively involved. So stopping, pausing, evaluating, all of these things consume a lot of metabolic load, but they become essential to changing our story, especially when it deals with chronic discomfort and has an emotional component attached to it, traumatic-informed care, things like this. So you can do it, your clients can do it. All it takes is energy and mindfulness. That's a lot, but it's worth it. Thank you.